Hi, so I'm Michael Bean, and this is the Confidence on Camera lesson for what is today? Tuesday, April the 7th. Today I'm talking about confidence and preparation. Mondays we're going to be talking about camera technique and how to tell stories using the camera. Tuesdays we're going to be talking about confidence and preparation. Wednesdays, this is the plan. We're going to be talking about story, and including how to break down a script and how to understand story and how to bring that understanding into your work. Thursdays, we're going to be talking about industry, and agents and the demos and headshots and resumes and all of the details. And Fridays, we're going to be putting it all together and either having an industry guest, or talking about auditions or kind of putting the work all together. So thanks for joining us. What we've got is about 15 minutes of lesson, give or take, and then Q&A. So that's how we're breaking things down. One of the things that I talked about last week that I just want to come back to is this idea that confidence is the first thing that casting directors see when you walk in the room. And anybody who's looked at my book, maybe I'll pull that up just so I can show you a couple of quotes there. The casting directors will often say that it's sort of the first thing that they see when people come through the room, into the room. It's enormously important to them. So if we do. So this is the Competence on Camera handbook. It's something that it's on its 4th edition now. I've been here we go. Confidence in casting directors. My favorite quality to see in an audition: confidence. Laura Brooks no longer casting, but the Judy Lee, who we saw last week on Friday. It's worth watching the video, by the way. It's on the Facebook page. The actor's most important tool in an audition is confidence. Michelle Allen, she cast the Superman movies, Watchmen. Confidence is the first thing we see in your auditions. Candice Elzinga casts a lot of stuff here in Vancouver. The idea is that when you first walk into the room, casting directors are making an assessment about your confidence and kind of the global level, and then applying that to your acting. And so confidence is enormously important in terms of how casting is thinking about you and how casting is making their decisions. But it's really unclear what it is. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about it in class. So here's my best thinking, is that to start with, confidence is in terms of what people are seeing, what are they making their assessment on, is that ease comes across as confidence. So if you walk into the room and you are breathing and looking people in the eyes, and you have and you're coming in with like, hey, this is me, then that comes across as confidence. And that level of ease, so the right level of ease for your audition, is something that you are tracking for yourself. They want to show you something called the stress and performance curve. So this is something that's that you might be familiar with from sports if you've done competitive sports. But the idea with the stress performance curve is that right, so it's low caliber of performance, sort of low output, high output, low pressure, very high pressure. And the idea is that if your system is not activated, if you're not fired up in some way, that doesn't necessarily make for the best performance. That a certain amount of pressure, somewhere between moderate and high, depending on who you are, is necessary to give you the best performance that you're capable of. And so this is why depending on your sport, if you're a competitive athlete, they will either coaches will either sort of hype up the players before they compete, or they'll do something to kind of ground everybody and bring them together. And as an actor, you are kind of always tracking this. Where is my optimal performance zone? Where is that, the sort of the top part of this curve, the best part of it for me, where that level of that pressure is helping me stay focused and really giving everything that I do more feeling. And I think this is in large part why they hold in-person auditions, is that that extra adrenaline level does often make performances more charged and interesting because the actors are feeling everything more strongly. And so uh, what is your optimal level of performance? One of the things I was saying to my adult students yesterday is that if you are taping an audition from home, you might want to think about doing something to raise the level of pressure for yourself. You might think about like doing push-ups or jumping jacks or running or something to like get your heart rate up before you start taping, so that you can simulate that level of excitement or adrenaline that makes for an optimal performance. Now, just show me hands. Let me get out of here. Show me hands. Who has had that experience, whether it's in performance or in an audition, where you went past the peak point, where most of your attention was inside, where you got short of breath or kind of shaky, right? Has anybody had that experience on stage? The before it's called stage fright, in auditions it's called audition nerves. Julie Patzwald, who's a teacher at my school, and a dear friend of mine, would say that auditions are 99% anxiety management and 1% acting. And I think that's because if you don't manage the anxiety, you just don't get to the 1%. Like you don't get to the rest of it. The anxiety management is necessary in order to get there. So that's the stress versus performance curve. And really what you're doing there is you are managing your fight, flight, freeze response, which is this adrenaline response. So I found some fun images. You can fight me on flight. That when our bodies get fired up, they're essentially getting ready to run away, to attack, or to hold very still. And typically what happens in social situations, and usually to most people in auditions, is they hold really still. Some part of what they're feeling and thinking, they clamp down on. And this I really like because it gives some indicators, like here's some of the things that go along with an adrenaline response. Dilated pupils, trembling, pale or flushed skin, rapid heartbeat, and breathing. Now, a lot of these things you don't have control over, and you don't even have like a good way to access, right? Particularly the dilated pupils, the trembling, the pale or flushed skin, rapid heartbeat, like maybe. But the one thing that you do have a certain amount of control over is breathing, which is I think why acting teachers who are working on audition technique and working on helping people be more confident often talk about breathing, because it's something that you have easy control over. You can stop and take some deep breaths before you walk into the room and ground yourself in that way. Now, this is a tool that I talked about briefly last week, and I just think it's really useful to look at again. It's called square breathing. And this is recommended I've seen it in sports psychology. I've seen it in child counseling. I once brought a woman who's a child counselor in to work with my students. And the idea is a 4 count, breathe in, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4. You do a couple of those, and even if you are really escalated, it's likely to bring you down a little bit. Oh, that was a fun GIF. I'll see if I can post it somewhere where you can find it. And I wanted to finish that piece with a quote by the founder of Gestalt psychology, a guy named Frederick Solomon Pearls, or Fritz Perls. Fear is excitement without the breath. Just to contextualize that, like, we want some excitement. We want you to be excited about your auditions. We want you to go in, carrying some of that excitement, right? You want to be on that like peak part of the curve. You just have to manage it for yourself to find the right spot. And breathing is probably your best access point because physically it's the one thing that you can do and really notice. The idea is that the idea is that watching when you start to get escalated, when that adrenaline starts to go up, it sharpens your attention. It helps you focus. And then at a certain point, rather than sharpening your focus and going like, okay, something's jumping out of the bushes, and shook, I'm totally focused on it. I'm totally focused on my reader. I'm totally focused on the work that I'm doing. If you pass into the like too much stress or too much pressure side of the curve, what happens is your focus continues to narrow until all you can really see is how you're feeling. And that's when you get kind of stuck on a looping thought, I'm going to forget my lines, or you're totally focused in here. And so doing anything physically to bring you back into your body and back into the room can really address that. And so square breathing is really good if you are too escalated. And then if you find that, like, if you're one of those people who is too chill before auditions, and it's rare, but there are some people who are like, yeah, I don't know. And I think that that's like if that's your typical response to stress, is like, okay, that's when you should do some jumping up and down in the audition room before you go in. And for the record, if you ever see somebody jumping up and down in the audition room, they're probably one of my students. I've had people come back to class and go like, somebody was jumping up and down in the audition room. And you were right. It totally was one of your students, which really pleased me. I really like that a lot. So that's stress performance curve, and a little bit of backup for this kind of thing that I see reflected in class over and over again, that ease comes across on camera as confidence. And I think that I want to quickly cover some rehearsal techniques that go with that. I'm not going to be able to demo them today, but my hope is to give you a small piece of text today at the end of this, and then in that first 10 minutes, because I'm going to log on tomorrow 10 minutes before the start again, to see what you can do with that piece of text if you can use some of these preparation techniques. And so what I've been doing in class lately is I'll start by getting people to find different ways of learning the words separate from learning the story, right? And so just get the words in your head. What often happens if an actor is focused on, oh my God, what do I say? What do I say? Then that shows up in their body in all of these subtle and unsubtle ways of tension. They hold their breath, their eyes kind of get stuck. And there's this like, I'm totally relaxed. I'm an actor. I'm doing important things. And all you really are reading is the tension in their body. Whereas the actor can bring in ease. Well, we believe that that's just a person doing a thing. And so we give them much, much more forgiveness for saying their lines wrong. And so knowing that, if you can rehearse ease right from the very beginning as much as possible, and that means not beating yourself up when you make mistakes. That means putting yourself in as relaxed and comfortable a position as you can possibly be while you're running your lines. That means that you put the script somewhere it's really easy to access, so that you can glance down at it and look up at it. And only when you feel totally at ease with that do you try putting it down. So there's none of that like testing yourself by like, okay, I'm gonna put it down. No, I'm not gonna look at it. I'm not. Because you know what? If you rehearse that, that'll show up in the audition. It certainly shows up in class. That extra level of tension or of pressure that you put on yourself shows up in your auditions. And it shows up in class, it shows up in your auditions. And so rehearse the ease in right from the very beginning by making it totally comfortable and easy for yourself. And then just by doing the words. Before you start adding the story, and tomorrow we're going to talk about story in a lot of detail, but before you get into the story, start by just running the words. And so what's the coaching note that's been really useful for me lately is to say, just facts. Okay, give them the just facts version. And if somebody is still unconsciously trying to act it, they're like, Mom, where are you going? And right, their voice is doing that sort of strange musical thing that often happens in elementary school and high school theater. Yeah, and people don't do it on purpose. They really don't. But you know how when you go and see a play that's a very amateur play, everybody's got this kind of musicality to the way they talk. They're like, where are you going? Whoa, wow, that's unbelievable. I never saw that before. Oh no. Everything has this kind of like up and down lilting musicality to it. And I don't think that there's any way to know for sure, but the story that I've made in almost 20 years of teaching is that that's what happens when you're accidentally copying the way that you first said a line. And so with repetition, by repeating how you said that line, just unconsciously, you're just repeating how to say it over and over and over again, it stops being something that you are saying. It stops being information. It starts being music. Yeah, and people really don't notice it. You know, in acting class, often with new actors, the job at the beginning is just getting them to be able to hear it so that they can make some of that change for themselves. Yeah, so the catching that musicality right at the beginning, by doing the just facts version. And if you really feel stuck or if you can't shake it out, say the words just facts. Say just facts, then say your line. Because especially if you get a line that looks really emotionally charged, right? You're doing a scene where you've got a line that's all in capital letters with 4 exclamation points. It says, "Leave me alone!" So that even when you're trying to read it, you're like, "Leave me alone." Oh, actually, you know what? That's too much feeling. Michael Biehn said that if I do that too many times, it's going to turn into "leave me alone" and have this musical quality that I won't be able to shake. So what you do for yourself is you say, "Leave me alone." Oh, just facts. Just facts. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. And you move on to the next line. And when you forget your line, you do your best to notice the panic that wants to creep in, and instead you breathe and you drop your eyes to the lines and you look up and you say them, and you right from the very beginning rehearse in as much like, "I feel good, I'm taking it easy, this is no big deal, I can get it wrong, I've got as much time as I need." You rehearse that in right from the very beginning. And if you do that over time, you will get to the point where memorizing lines is very, very easy. Oh, it'd be so great if I had her here to vouch for this. But I had a student in one of my scene study classes a couple of semesters ago, just somebody who's been studying with me for maybe 4 years, and she came in with 7 pages of dialogue that I'd assigned her. I'd sent it to her on the Thursday. She came in on the Saturday, and she'd had it down cold. And I was like, wow, that's great. Like 7 pages of dialogue, like you were so in the zone. When you first started training here at Biz, training with me, how long would it have taken you to do these 7 pages? And I think she said, probably like 7 hours, something like that. And that's about reasonable. Like it's about an hour a page for dialogue. I was like, okay. And then today, how long did it take you to learn these 7 pages? And she's like, well, I sat down with him in Tim Hortons about an hour before class. Right. Yeah. And that's because she'd been doing it on a really regular basis for 4 solid years. Like that's just, memory is a muscle like everything else. And forcing it is not the way that you make it strong. Finding just the right amount of effort and rehearsing in that ease will get you where you want to go faster. So that's and if just facts gets boring, if you're like, okay, the just facts version gets boring, or even if you've just done it a couple of times in a row, try whispering the line. Whispering the line can be enormously effective. But it has to be an actual whisper because that takes all the feeling out of it. You just take it down here, take it to an actual whisper. Because if I say it quietly, I can still say, "Leave me alone," and put all this extra stress into it. But if I take it to a whisper, it's like, "Leave me alone." It doesn't matter how much I try and get emotional with you, it's just not gonna come across. So you can take it to an actual whisper, or you can do it in funny voices. If that's more your style, then run it with a different feeling each time, right? Run it with feelings that make no sense for the scene. Be silly with it on purpose so that you are just keeping yourself engaged while you practice these lines over and over again, right? I'll "Leave me alone." And they're like, "Leave me alone." Like, "Leave me alone." And I'll just sometimes I'll just play with different accents. They don't have to be good. The point is just give yourself a reason to run the words over and over again and enjoy yourself. Like enjoyment is also like a really good hallmark of ease. But if somebody comes into the room and they look like they're enjoying themselves, well, heck yeah, of course that reads as confidence. If somebody comes in, they're like, "Oh God, hi, I hope I please you, please like me." And that's what their face and body are saying. Well, maybe that doesn't read as the most confident behavior. This is why we want you to rehearse that ease in from the top of it. Oh man, pulled like a couple of video clips that I wanted to show you, but it takes time. So I'm just going to save the videos and talking a little bit more about my best thinking about vulnerability and the link between vulnerability and the kind of new research that's showing up on vulnerability and doing good acting and being able to show up in the room with that sense of like, this is who I am. Right now, I will say that anybody who's like a super keener should go onto YouTube, and here we are. And watch The Power of Vulnerability by Brene Brown. She is fantastic. I was going to show you 3 or 4 minutes of her video today and talk about it. Yeah, but I think what I'll do is I will come back and highlight a piece of it next week. Now, she is a shame and vulnerability researcher at the University of Texas whose ideas about vulnerability are the clearest that you will find anywhere. And I was exposed to her stuff maybe 10 or 11 years ago, but she's become a much bigger deal now, right? She's got a documentary on Netflix. She's kind of all over the place. Like her ideas are starting to really gain traction. But her definition as a social worker and a teacher of social work of vulnerability is that vulnerability is uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. Like I'm not sure what's going to happen. It feels like I'm taking a chance here, and people can see how I feel. And to me, that's just a fantastic description of acting. Of what good acting we want it to be like. We want it to be uncertain, because if watching it, we know exactly where it's going to go. It doesn't grab our attention the same way. We want it to be risky. We want you to put yourself out there, and we certainly want to see how you're feeling. And so her work on that is, I think, one of the best ins to starting to really wrap your head around, okay, how do I move towards this point of being able to show up with like, this is who I am. And yeah, it's not perfect, but this is how I actually am. And this is something that I said last week that I just really think is important, is that when somebody shows up and says, this is who I am, and it's not perfect, and it's kind of a mess, then we read that as incredibly confident behavior. We read that as confidence. That's what confidence looks and sounds like. It looks like somebody showing up and saying, here's how I actually am right now. If instead we see somebody trying to put a good face on things, like, hey, yeah, here's who I am. Yep, totally fine. All good. Super confident here. And we read that there's other stuff going on under the surface. We don't trust that at all. We really don't. So your job as an actor is strongly connected to your ability to show up and have the capacity to step into the room, breathe, see other people, look them in the eye, and be real about, at least with yourself, about how you are. Now, we're going to talk about this more when we get into industry, and you'll see it reflected in the Judy Lee video from last Friday, which, if you weren't here, highly recommend watching, which is, you never step into the room and apologize. There's a big difference between, I know I'm a mess and that's allowed, and stepping into the room going, I'm sorry, I didn't learn my lines, this is going to suck, lower your expectations so I don't have to feel bad. Like, no apologies, no excuses is a fantastic rule to have for yourself. But that's really different from you have to pretend that everything's okay all the time. Instead, you want to show up and be like, hey, here's me and all my mess, and I'm going to put it into the scene for you today. And then they can read it as the character's mess and be like, wow, what a fantastic, confident actor. That character had so much depth and complexity. They were really a mess. Wow, love it, art. Because I got excited, looking for visual aids, there are 2 more things that I want to show you quickly, and then we'll open it up for questions. One is this iceberg illusion, which I quite liked. Right, that that we often see the success, for that actors have. We don't see, of course, like all of the actors who are in the process of getting there. And this fantastic quote from Arthur Devaney who's a little known economist who writes about Hollywood. But I saw this quote of his, and I had to get his book because I was like, that there's something about that that really speaks to me. That what we call talent generally comes from success, not its opposite. That typically what happens is we see somebody who is successful, or we experience them as successful, and then we make our story about talent based on that. And I used to spend a lot of time in class talking about this. I don't know, VA, you might be able to vouch for that one, and Raven, maybe you too. The idea that talent is the word we use to describe the skill that somebody else has internalized. Talent's the word we use for practice that we don't see. That it's a very useful word socially and culturally for us to be able to say, oh, that actor is so talented. And then when we really pull it apart, what we often find, or almost always find, with actors we experience as talented, is that they've just put in an enormous amount of practice, in their lives, on stage, on set, in class, in practice. And so much so they've internalized those things, and they kind of seem magical. And so for those of you who are in the process of learning, I just want to give you the incentive to build in success for yourself. Like on the outside, I think that confidence, that ease comes across as confidence, right? That being able to show up and say, here's who I am, and have that ease in your body reads as confidence. I think that on the inside, in terms of like a psychologically or as an approach to it, that expecting that you will find success in whatever you're doing, that's my best thinking about what confidence looks like on the inside. It's like, yeah, you know what? I'll probably be okay. In fact, maybe it'll even be great. And so with that in mind, building in success right from the beginning, giving yourself manageable challenges and arranging for yourself to be successful at them is likely to build that inner sense that probably the next thing you take on will be successful. And that's one of the things you want to collaborate. If you are working with a coach or in class, it's one of the things you want to collaborate with your coach on, so that you're doing something that is challenging, but that you can find success with. And if it's something that you're working on your own, I would just, like, let's say that you're using this time in quarantine to like work on monologues. I would say, give yourself something that give yourself success first. Pick a shorter one. Pick one that you're like, oh yeah, I just like this one. Or the emotions in this monologue are closer to me. They're easier to access. Right? Ladder yourself up to it, because if you give yourself that repeated experience of success, that's likely to be supportive of your confidence long term. Okay, that was a confidence camera tutorial Tuesday, talking about confidence and preparation. Obviously, there's a lot more we could get into, but I'm going to cut myself off there. Okay, I'm unmuting everybody. Joanne, I'm going to turn your video back on. I'm so sorry. You were playing with some kind of feature that like was mapping different things, on your shirt, like electronically, and it's really hard to be distracting when you're like only thumbnail size, but you pulled it off. I was like, I'm trying to speak, but really I'm just looking at this weird thing that's happening with Joanne's shirt. So I just turned off your video because I have the power. Okay, now that you're all unmuted, do you have questions about anything that I've said? I think I could probably go into a lot more detail about each one of those things, about the ways that I've seen actors work on those skills and try and develop them, the kinds of exercises in class that have proved useful. But what do you want to know? So I'm not just talking. Yeah, Hannah.
If I don't know if this might not be like really related, but if like a character is wearing glasses but your headshot doesn't include glasses, Is it okay to wear glasses?
Oh yeah, totally, totally.
Okay.
Let's see if I've got mine here. The my joke, not joke about glasses is that they add 20 points to your IQ. So if I'm going out for like, so really, like I worked as a whole bunch of times as doctors, and I would be like, they just hired the glasses. Like I'm just coming along for the ride.
Okay.
If you're going out for a character that has to be intelligent, yeah, totally wear a pair of glasses. And for everybody who doesn't have glasses at home, like, I don't know, hit a dollar store and get a pair of like cheap reading glasses and just poke the lenses out. Because if you're, especially with the resolution on the self-tape at home, you actually can't tell the difference. Like right now, except for when the light catches it, if you're in the uh, if you're in the like gallery view, you can't really tell if Hannah's glasses have lenses or not. A lot of times, particularly in features, but also for television, they will have a pair of glasses for the lead that doesn't have lenses in them. I had a roommate who was an optometrist, and it drove him nuts because he could tell always. He was like, how do people not notice they don't have lenses in their glasses? Which I thought was like the weirdest, super specific thing to be thinking about while watching movies. Anyway, sorry, you had a question, please?
It's not related to this at all.
Okay.
But are you also in Case 39 and in Jennifer's Body?
Yes, I am. For
Okay.
brief moments, like look me up on IMDb and see all the things. Okay. Any questions about confidence, ease, preparation? Aggie, please.
Michael, it sounds as though during the auditions, if you come across as, at ease, you don't have all the lines memorized, you still have a really good chance. You don't have to memorize all the lines specifically word for word. I mean, that is lovely to do, but it really, I think you're coming across as don't fret so much over getting the lines perfectly. Just be confident, be at ease, and you have still a good chance. Is that true?
Yes and no.
Okay.
The yes and no. I think that the camera sees confidence first,
Mm-hmm.
And story second, and details third. So and all three are important if you want like a top-notch professional level performance. Now somebody Joanne's age could get away by going in with just confidence because Joanne, how old are you? You're like 9, 8. You're muted right now. Right, so Joanne's 8, and so if she goes in,
9.
You're 9. Joanne's 9. So if she goes in with lots of confidence, they'll be like, "Wow, that girl's awesome," and she thinks she's awesome, and we think she's awesome. But you should really like for the callback, tell her agent that we need her to work on her lines. And then Josh, you're what, 13?
13, yeah.
Right. And so the competition's going to be a little bit more. He's going to be auditioning against other people who've also worked professionally already. He's got to go in at least tell the story, right? So if he goes in and he's just like, I'm amazing, but like I don't really have any sense of the story we're supposed to be telling, and they're going to be like, thanks so much, Josh, bye. Right, like if his character's supposed to be like shy and geeky, and he goes in like, "Hey, blah 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 blah," they're gonna be like, "Okay, you know what, peace. You're not a really great fit for this, but like you're awesome. We think you're awesome. Next time, actually read the script." By the time somebody is your age or my age going in professionally, we are auditioning against actors who have been auditioning and working professionally for 10 years, 20 years, and at this point, it is necessary, I think, to go in with confidence. Hey, this is me. To tell the story. Look, here's the story. I understand it. And to bring the detail. I'm going to have my eye lines. I'm going to know. I'm going to have the lines down. It's just that the most important thing of those three is confidence. So if you're working towards that professional skill set, I think the impulse is to like eat the whale all at once. To be like everything, all the details, and all the confidence, and all I'm just and because confidence is the first thing that the camera reads, that ferocity to like perfect it and get it all right all at once reads like that's the first thing we see. We're like, okay, this person is just kind of freaking out. And so what I'm suggesting is, as you're building those skills, start with confidence. And I'm not saying that you can't that you should coast on that. I'm not saying Joanne shouldn't bother learning how to tell stories, or have the details. I'm just saying that the confidence is so significant, that if you don't come across with confidence, then I think the story and the details are just way, way less relevant, because the decision makers are thinking about, can we afford to gamble with hiring this person and then bringing them to set where lots of things are going to be unexpected? There's going to be new lines. There's going to be new pages of the script. There are going to be changes to the story that we don't know about. There might be weird stuff happening on set that day. There's going to be a whole bunch of other people there and those personality dynamics. Will this person be able to handle that? Do we feel like, yeah, they'll probably be okay? Which is sort of connected to what I was saying about that internal experience of confidence, right? You come across with all this ease, then maybe the people who are making the decision look at that and go, okay, you know what? They'll probably be okay. It feels like an acceptable risk for us. Does that answer your question, Aggie?
Yes, thank you so much, Michael.
Right. Yeah. Natalia.
So when you go into the audition room, will you have a copy of your scripts, or will only the reader have one?
That's entirely up to you. I think if there's any chance that you will completely lose your line, that it's always a good idea to have your script in your hand. And different casting directors have different opinions about that. Different acting teachers have different opinions about it. What I will say from my own experience watching scenes over and over again in class and helping people prep for auditions is that if you practice with ease and keep the script right straight down between you and the person you're talking to, then if your mind totally blanks, have you ever had that? Have you ever been doing a scene, Natalia, and just like you're in it, you're feeling it, and suddenly you're like, oh my God, I actually have no idea where the scene goes next. Yeah, you have. Okay, so if the script is right there in between you and them, then what it looks like when you forget a line is like, oh yeah, that's what I have to say, and nobody even notices. Nobody even notices, especially if you're doing the camera technique thing that we talked about yesterday, that we've been talking about on Mondays, of keeping the script down where the camera can't see it, keeping it below the edge of the frame. Nobody knows. If, however, you don't have your script there, because you're like, you know what, I don't need it, I'm boss, no problem, and you completely blank, which might happen in your first year or 2 or 10, then what that looks like is, oh yeah, here's line, and it's much more likely to impact their impression of your confidence level, I think. Right, so this is my style. It's like long answers to simple questions. You're like, can I? The answer is, yeah, you can bring your script in. If your question is, should I bring my script in? The answer is, if you need it, do. If you have enough ease and enough practice in your body that you can walk in without it, and have a pretty good sense that you'll be fine, yeah, I think that comes across a little bit more professional. But remember that those details are distant third. What we want is confidence first, story second, and all those details, of which there are many, come a distant third. Okay, any more questions? Okay, thanks for making time for us today. Tomorrow I'm going to be talking about story. Now I didn't have it ready for today, but I want to give you a chance to. Use what we're talking about with story and with confidence, and preparation to prepare a piece of text. And so I'm going to go. I'm going to go and search out my monologue PDF, and pick one of those monologues, and I'm going to post it onto the Facebook page. So facebook.com/bizstudio, and along with a link to the new Facebook group, because really, if I'm posting professionally published scripts, I should not be putting them in a public forum. I should be putting them in this private group. And so that'll give you incentive to go and find the Confidence on Camera group. And even before I've got all the details sorted out, I can just be like, well, I know you, so yes, you're approved. And then I can post scripts there, and we can use that for if you have questions that come up between sessions, and also so that I can give you something to practice. Okay, final comments? Okay, let's get out of here and go do the rest of our days. Thanks for making the time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.